One way that the current renaissance of board gaming is operating to give us new designs is not just to come up with new mechanics like deck building or worker placement, but also to combine previous mechanics in unique ways. I'm thinking of, Mancala used to be its own game, and now it is a mechanic within larger games such as Planes or Trajan or Crusaders that will be done. And similar things, we have trick-taking games, and now those trick-taking games have more stuff connected to it, so now you're exploring space by taking tricks or guiding foxes in the forest, that kind of thing. Nirvana seems to follow that same tradition in that you're going to have a mechanics that you already know, at least from modern games, most likely, which is roll and write, connected with a more traditional idea of a towering climbing game in which you're playing cards of increasing value. Matter of fact, the game, in its basic idea, it's almost like two mini games. There is a first phase in which you will create virtual cards using a flip, a roll and write mechanic, and then you will play those virtual cards. In that, it reminded me of King Domino Duo, in which you are basically creating virtual domino tiles. Again, talk about older mechanics being reinvented. So each player will have a board, such as this one, which is on a single sheet of paper, and you'll write on it. You get these delightful mini pencils here, and then there are 3 dice, very nice wooden dice. I guess it has this idea of nature, of, I don't know, enlightenment. I like the fact that they're wooden dice for some reason. It seems to fit the theme. As you see, each board is divided into areas that are colored, and in the basic game, which I'll tell you, to start with, you can ignore the colors. They don't matter. All that matters are the shapes of these areas that are all of 3 spaces each. So somebody, doesn't matter who, will roll the dice, and then everybody will use the result, and you will need to write those 3 numbers, 4, 4, and 6 in this case, in one of these sections of 3 bubbles. Now, 3 times during the game, you can also alter a result by plus or minus 1 by making a tick in one of these boxes. So right now I could use this as a 7 or a 5 if I wanted. You can use even multiple modifiers in the same die roll, on the same number. So I could write that down as an 8. I don't know if right now that makes sense, but I'm gonna do it just to show an example. And I have a 4 and a 4, and right there I filled in a space on one of those things. Now, as you can see, these spaces are connected by arrows to these rectangles here, and these represent the virtual cards that you're creating. When you fill in all of the spaces belonging to an arrow, you write in the rectangle there the sum of all the numbers there. In this case, for example, this arrow only crosses 1 bubble, and so I write an 8 there, which means I just created a virtual card with an 8. And then the next turn we have these numbers, and suppose I decide to write them in this space here. I decide to write 4, 5, 4, and 5. I just created another card here, which is a 9. And then here I got 2, 4, and 4, and I decide to write them like so. And I created a 2 there. So you get the idea. Basically, you will continue like this until all bubbles are filled, which also means that is until, and then at that point, everybody will have this display full of numbers. And I'm gonna write a bunch of random numbers here, because then the next phase starts, in which a player will start. The player with the lowest number in this space here will go first. If there's a tie, then you look at this one, and then this one, and then this one, until hopefully you will have somebody that will go first. The player who goes first announces a set of cards that they're playing from the display. And after they do so, they cross them out. For example, I can say I'm going to play a set of 3 fives if I'm the first player. 3 fives. Now, going clockwise, the next player has the option to pass or to play a set containing the same number of cards but of higher value. So basically, the next player could play 3 sixes, 3 seven, 3 eights, or something like that. Suppose the next player says, okay, I'm going to play 3 eights, and they cross those out. Then the next player needs to either pass or play at least 3 nines. And so on and so forth until everybody's forced to pass. In which case, then the player who played cards last plays the next set. And suppose it's me again. I say, okay, I'm going to play a single 2. Now players need to play sets of 1 card that is higher than 2. And then later it comes back to me, and the last player had played a single 9. I'm like, okay, I'm going to play a single 11. I could not play my single 8 right now because the first player had a 9. I always need to go up. And that's the idea. You continue like this until a player has discarded all of their cards. I guess that first you acquire material belongings, you spend a lot of time creating your earthly kingdom, and now you're getting rid of everything, and that allows you to reach Nirvana. That's my super culturally impoverished pop psychobabble interpretation of the game. But that's the general idea. That's how you play the game. To me, in the standard game, which is what I explained, it's interesting enough. As a filler, of course, not going to be like an epic adventure. But as a filler, there's enough thinking there that goes first into making the cards and then into playing them. Now, I'm sure that some of you who understand numbers probably have already solved it in your head. You already figured out the perfect combination of how many sets you need to have in, how many sets, meaning how large they are. I'm sure you solved it already, and that's good for you. And if I play against you, don't tell me. I'll still be excited because I still haven't figured it out, and I'll be there like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? And maybe even though you have the perfect algorithm in your head, then the dice are not kind to you and you still have to improvise. But fear not, my friends who have solved it. The game also comes with these unique cards that you shuffle during the setup, and then you're gonna draw 3 of them, and they will create unique conditions for the present game. So you will not necessarily always score the same things in the same way. The victory condition remains that you need to discard all of your cards. But there may be different effects that will apply sometimes during the phase where you collect, when you create your cards, and some of the times when you play those cards. For example, in this game, if this card is active, now 11 cards can be counted as 2 ones instead. So I could play an 11 and a 1 as a set of 3 ones, for example. If you made 6 cards, you must cross out your highest card. And I'm just gonna show you some of these, and you can pause and read the text. And they can be quite powerful, especially there are several ones that basically if you meet a certain conditions during the preparation phase, you get to cross out the cards right away. They never have to go here. So a player may start with a full spread of cards, another player with 4 fewer, or with even fewer than that. And that I like those in particular because this way the initial phase doesn't feel just like preparation for the following phase, which again to me it's interesting enough even that way. It can be like a really heavy condition here. You lose the game if you don't meet that condition. But again, I like the ones that will give me some immediate advantage right away, because they seem to give more value to the first phase and integrate the other phases, the second phase better. But even as a 2-act, tragic comedy, it still works. Surprisingly so. Actually, my biggest concern when I was reading the rules was precisely that the game would just feel like 2 separated mini games with no real interconnection, but that wasn't the case. I felt that preparing for the main game was actually cool and interesting enough. When you add these cards, that also enhances the experience, and that was also what my friends told me, that they like the version with the cards even better than the basic one. So what you have here is an original game. I don't remember playing a game that is quite like this one. And mechanics such as roll and write, we see that very, very often these days. Roll and write, flip and write may be one of the most popular mechanics of the last decade or so. And yet here you have a way of doing it that I hadn't seen before, and that just works. As a peaceful, entertaining filler, I think it really works. Sometimes it may feel a little bit anticlimactic because you prepared your spread and you're there ready to play the second phase of the game, and somebody did so well in the first phase that they're almost done. And so the second phase lasts very little. But then I've seen the second phase also really feeling like a real game, in the sense that somebody is behind. Now I'm playing certain sets because I think that will prevent you from playing other sets. And so it can feel pretty interesting and exciting that way too, but you just don't really have any way of knowing before the second phase of the game starts. So the approach is one that feels an innovation around known mechanics, and in my opinion it works. As a filler, mind you, that remains the caveat there. As a simple filler that you play in 20 minutes or so, this is an entertaining one with interesting decisions, with all the advantages of roll and write games, so which we like so much. And the final product, the final experience really works as a filler, in my opinion.